Visibility into your organization's assets can save you time and money. ServiceNow has been iterating upon its ITAM solution since its introduction to the ServiceNow platform. But what's new in asset management in the Washington, D.C. release of ServiceNow? Well, I couldn't think of anyone better to have this conversation with than Sandeep Babber. Sandeep is AVP of ITAM at GlideFast Consulting. So drop your blue hearts, drop your air horns for Sandeep Babber. What it do, Sandeep?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. I've been waiting all week to fire off some air horns for you.
Yes, I'm so excited. Thank you for having me back on the show. I really, really appreciate it.
That's right. You are a two-time guest of 100 Days of Service Now, and I'm happy to have you on this Lunch and Learn format where we get to talk about some of the most compelling features that you see in this Washington, D.C. release. What does Washington, D.C. generally look like for ITAM?
So there is a ton of new features and capabilities in the Washington release for ITAM overall. So that includes hardware asset management, software asset management, enterprise asset management, as well as cloud insights as well.
So, Sandeep, let's get into some of the most compelling features that you see in the Washington, D.C. release of ServiceNow.
Yes, absolutely. So this feature focuses specifically for hardware asset management as well as enterprise asset management. And this is really being able to understand the total cost of ownership for all of your assets. So when you think of cost of ownership, right, a lot of organizations will just focus on the initial startup cost of an asset, right, that purchase cost. But what this feature allows you to do essentially is to look at all of the different expense lines and rate cards associated to an asset. So when we think of a specific asset and the different types of rate cards that are associated to it, we start to think about the labor costs, the contract costs, capital costs, material costs. So if there is an issue with it and you need to service it and you need to pay shipping to send it back, all of those specific costs are highlighted and documented for you to act on from a reporting perspective. Now, this also gives you more visibility into understanding what your cost analysis is for the future. So you're able to forecast that a lot better, as well as to get visibility throughout the whole life cycle, right? So you could have a specific make or model that is costing more from a maintenance perspective, where with this report, you have that capability and understanding to choose a different model, perhaps that is just of equal value and performance, perhaps, that does not require as much maintenance, right? So you can definitely find some good cost savings there. Specifically for enterprise asset management, we want to talk about the parent-child relationship there as
Yes.
well. So not just the overall cost of an asset, but now you have that capability to really dig down and understand the smaller costs that make up a bigger asset. So let me explain a little bit. So if you want to think of a medical cart in the medical space, essentially. So a medical cart could be classed as one whole asset, but is made up of smaller different model components. Now, each of those model components, for example, a thermometer or a scanner or any
Sure.
other device that goes on to that cart essentially is going to have costs associated to it. So now you have that capability to report on the medical cart itself and understanding what the total cost of ownership is of making up all of those smaller assets as a parent. Or you can also report on the total cost of ownership for those smaller model components that are there classed as children essentially.
Sure.
And and that applies to different all sorts of different verticals that you may have. So an example inside of manufacturing, think of the big robotic machinery on an assembly line, right? All the gears and screws and all those different pieces
Sure.
that make up that big robot, you can now track from a cost perspective and understanding what those rate cards are, the labor costs associated to it, contractual costs associated to it, any sort of maintenance, et cetera, as you go through.
So, Sandeep, let me ask you because I think you point out something that's really important here when you talk about the parent child relationship and being able to understand the smaller costs that are associated with that bigger asset. So, this is something that's new for Washington, D.C. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes. So the parent child relationship has always been there from an enterprise asset management perspective. And its feature in terms of being able to identify the multi component modules throughout it, but being able to report on the total cost of ownership,
Ah, okay.
that is the new feature there. And through analytics, and as you can see on the screen, a really, really nice and easy to navigate dashboard, you have clear visibility into all of those costs.
Sure. And that total cost of ownership piece, being able to have visibility within that, I think about ROI, right? ServiceNow is certainly an investment. And when you're looking at a solution for your asset management, be it hardware, enterprise, software, being able to track that information to be able to get your return on the investment into ServiceNow platform, I see how this can be really important in making that happen.
Absolutely. So, for all the viewers that are there watching this or even on replay after, I want you to think about, are you able today to run a report that tells you the total cost of ownership for all of your assets, whether that might be end user computing devices, whether you're in a manufacturing vertical or an enterprise area, where you're able to clearly understand and report on how much your asset cost, the depreciation value, any sort of rate card associated to it, maintenance, labor costs,
Hmm.
contractual costs. And can you do that today? And I think the value speaks to itself of being able to identify, and really understand what is your devices costing your organization today and how you can better plan for that in the future.
Sure. And then I think about sort of the fire pit, of kind of shoveling in money when you don't have a solution in place, though you may have it documented in, say, an Excel spreadsheet, just for an example, but you don't have visibility into the total cost of ownership. So I think this is a really important and compelling feature within this Washington, D.C. release. I'm glad that you pulled this one out to talk about today.
Yep, absolutely. It's one of my favorite that really applies both into hardware and enterprise asset management.
Awesome, awesome. All right, so what else you got for us, Sandeep?
Yeah, absolutely. So the next one I want to talk about is specific for software asset management. And within software asset management, one of the quickest ways to value is to integrate with our SaaS providers, right? So think of your Office 365s, your Adobe, your Zooms, anything that's inside the cloud that you want to be able to report on if you have enough licenses or if you're over allocated as well. But what this feature does allows you to identify any sort of shadow SaaS connections that you may have within your organization. And the first thing a lot of people will say, well, what do you mean by shadow SaaS? Like, if we're gonna, for all of these cloud providers, we need to sign up for it, right? So a lot of times it's quicker to use a corporate credit card to sign up to a service that you may have forgotten about after using it one time, or through mergers and acquisitions. When you acquire a new organization, there could be some sort of duplication in terms of the types of applications that you have already subscribed to. And so, what this feature does, along with the agent client collector and the digital end experience plugin, allows you to identify if users are connecting to any sort of SaaS providers
Mm.
um, that you are not currently tracking. So just that alone is a pretty big wow feature, right?
Yeah.
Because you only know what you know, right? And so how do you uncover the unknown? And exactly with this is you have that capability of doing it. So as you can see here on the screen, you can see at the top the pie chart here that is showing any sort of SaaS providers that are managed or unmanaged. And then inside the report, that's just a little snippet of it, you can see exactly the URL that it's going to, the publisher, the product, if it's managed or not, and how many users are going to it. Now, from there, you're able to start to get some more information on which ones you would want to target first. So if you look at this example of Monday.com, for example,
Sure.
you can see that there's 25 users going to this site. It is managed, so that's great. But for Figma, it's not managed, and there's 10 users, and they're accessing it, for over 2 days, nearly 3 days, and the last time that they've accessed it, right? So this gives you the tools and the insight to be able to action and overcome any sort of unforeseen audits and penalties that you may occur because you're not managing this,
Sure.
as well as cost savings in terms of reclaiming licenses that you could be potentially over allocated for as well.
Okay, this to me is huge. This is really huge, and I think about how how ITAM and IT departments generally are like really stretched, have a lot of responsibilities, have a lot on their plate. I think about customers that I talk to and like how their time is just so thin, right? And
Absolutely.
just aesthetically, this is great to look at, not just because the colors and all of that, but because of how it encapsulates the information that you need to make decisions on immediately, right? You may have this solution or you may have this information somewhere, but like, where do you find it? What does it mean? Can you represent it graphically? This right here, in terms of this report that I'm seeing, this pie chart, it gives me this enumerated list. It tells me exactly the information that I need to make a decision on, or what I would think an IT asset manager needs to make a decision on. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, absolutely. We all know in organizations, different departments often work in silos
Yep.
or enterprise organizations. There's just far too many people and products that we need to maintain, as well as doing our day to day job, right? So, having this insight into what is being missed is huge, because we already know that we're managing a certain amount of applications and we've got that level set and we're getting value out. But how do we get more value out of our investment into ServiceNow, into software asset management? And by having these features such as the Shadow SaaS discovery, you're able to get that unknown piece. It's sort of, think of it as the missing puzzle piece of, well, I only know what we have, or I've just acquired this company. How do we know what they have and what they've subscribed to? And
Wow.
do they even know of what they've subscribed to, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is great. You know, we have Jay Spencer in the house, and he has a few questions about the Shadow SaaS discovery. He says, how does it know what SaaSs are shadow setting? Like if users are hitting Canva, it's just a check if they're logging in?
Yes. So through the ACC agent, they're able to understand what URLs that a specific user is going to, from a SaaS perspective. And then to understand if it is managed or not, it's going back into the SAM module and seeing, is there a software model created for that specific publisher or product? Are we tracking it in the license workbench manager? Do we have entitlements associated to it? What is sort of that background information coming to it? And then from the reporting perspective and the digital end user experience, being able to see and collecting additional information around the time that it's been accessed and how long they've been on and using that application.
Sure. Now, is the SaaS checker, is that part of the enterprise SKU?
Yes, I believe so. Yes, it applies for professional and enterprise.
Sandeep, if you don't mind, I want to go back to what we were talking about earlier with TCO, total cost of ownership. We have a couple
Mhm.
questions that have come in. I believe we did. Or I know Daniel Slocum is another giant within the ITAM space. Good to have you here, Daniel. He's saying TCO is crucial for strategic planning. If you'd like to speak a little bit to that, that'd be awesome.
Yes, absolutely. Right. So when we start to think and wanting to forecast in terms of, what are some of the features, or what are some of the costs coming up for next year, right? How do we know what that total cost encompasses? So if you think of two different scenarios, one where, okay, I need 500 laptops as an example for next year. That's what we're planning on doing. We're rolling out a project. It's going to require this much end user devices, for example. Um, if each laptop, as an example, just to keep the math easy, is $100 each, right? You have $500 there associated to it. But that essentially isn't the total cost of ownership. That is just your initial startup cost. So when you're going to your CFO or your leadership and trying to understand, hey, I have this project where I need this much money for, to enable this project, we want to be able to arm our customers with more information, or at least with the most possible information, and understanding what that total cost of ownership is, associating it with specific rate cards around maintenance, labor, contractual costs as well for it. And so this is really tied to that make and model. And so if you already know that you have an existing model that you just need to increase the amount for, you already have some of this information there to understand, well, over the last year, we spent X amount on labor costs. We spent X amount on capital costs. We spent X amount on maintenance costs for it. So now we have more pieces to the puzzle in order to forecast better and more accurately.
Awesome. Awesome. Uh, Jace has a comment here about the agent client collector. He says the ACC has a limit of 4K clients for 4K clients permit, so you need mid-service to handle your workspace. Not sure how that works with BYOD users.
Right. So in specific regards to bring your own device users, as long as there's an agent associated onto that machine, then we would be able to report back to it. So if it's not, generally most organizations, if you're bringing your own device, there is some sort of level of compliance that goes into it, and some sort of restrictions in terms of ensuring that your machine is clean and there's no viruses, and that there is some sort of governance around it. So it's kind of hard to give a holistic picture of it because each organization is different. But short answer is, as long as we're able to install an agent on that machine, then we would be able to report back to it. Now, in the case of, well, my organization has 8,000 devices, or a number much, much larger than that, that is definitely doable. We would just increase the number of mid servers that we would need for it.
Awesome, awesome. All right. So what's next? What you got for us next?
Yep, absolutely. So the last one that I want to talk about here is cloud cost management, right? And this used to be called Cloud Cost Insight, but specifically now it's been rebranded by ServiceNow. And sort of if we think about the very first one that we talked about, total cost of ownership, right? Organizations are focusing on a lot of the time on our physical devices, right? Whether that's endpoint devices such as laptops, desktops, or our data center devices, whether it's networking gear or servers. But what about the virtual world, right? Our cloud footprint is increasing bigger and bigger every day within organizations. And so, how are we able to track the costs associated to that? And so that's where cloud cost management comes in. And one of the great features within it now is being able to understand the costs associated with Kubernetes, right?
Yeah.
So understanding that virtual footprint, as well as understanding the cost of the Kubernetes within it, as well as its namespace as well, when you start to discover it.
That's awesome. Now, you've kind of gone through some of the most compelling features in the Washington, D.C. release of ServiceNow ITAM in particular. I'm curious because there are a lot of folks that are potentially listening to this or are looking for an ITAM solution. Curious about how GlideFast is solving for that. Packages, where do we get in? It's sort of like playing double dutch. Like, I know I need a solution, I know I need to jump in, but like at what point, when is the right time, and how do you make this as pain free as possible? Can you speak to a little bit to some of what you have been creating over there?
Yeah, absolutely. And we get that question a lot, right? And so we understand definitely that starting up with ServiceNow, and it's a big journey and it's a big front, whether that's going through hardware asset management and software asset management, it is a big investment into it.
Yeah.
And so the way that GlideFast is helping our customers essentially is by our strategic offerings of our ROI Kickstarters. So these offerings right now is for hardware asset management and software asset management, and giving the ability for our clients to essentially set up hardware or software asset management and extracting that ROI immediately.
Mm.
Right. And so that's what their leadership is wanting to see. Let's identify the quick wins, get that money back into our pockets, pay for our original investment, and then some more and more as we start to showcase the features and capabilities and the value that's coming back out of it, and then start to progress through different phased approaches within that specific module that you may have.
So what I heard you say is that the ROI quick starter, whether it's for Ham or Sam, you could do both or one or the other, that
Mhm.
we're looking for quick wins. We're looking to get paid in that original investment, and then also save some money, and then looking forward into like a phased approach. I'm thinking in terms of like roadmaps. Do I have that correct?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So a lot of times when an organization may want to start a ham project or a SAM project, we want to do every single thing, and all those features and functionality is great. But one of the things that we've learned by doing so many of these projects and being so successful at it is that you really don't want to boil the whole ocean at
Yeah.
once, right? So coming through in a strategic phased approach and understanding where we can help clients set up the tool, extract the value immediately, and then start to work on specific areas of the life cycle from a hardware asset management. Think of it from the procurement to disposal, and understand what those business
Mm.
use cases are for those organizations, and then start to work towards those and making sure that we can achieve them and they can get the most out of the tool in the most quickest time possible, essentially.
Awesome. I think about the team that you work with and these ROI Kickstarters. There's a lot that organizations are managing, and I appreciate you're talking about a prescriptive approach that's going to be tailored to that particular organization. Is that what I'm understanding you to say?
Yes, absolutely. No two organizations are the same, right? And
Yeah.
so while two organizations may want hardware asset management, one could be driven by some sort of a audit audit driver where they need to understand what they have and where it is and who's using it. Or there could be another one that's driving it from a simple cost analysis perspective where our IT spend is just too high. We need to understand why that is and where's all that money going.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit. Let's shift gears just a little bit. A couple questions
Mhm.
before we end. Let's talk about SACON. I had a chance to meet the people over at SACON at Knowledge 24 this year in Las Vegas, and SACON is a mobility device management tool. Can you talk a bit about the work you and your team are doing with SACON?
Yes, absolutely. So this is something that really excites us and me because I just love this stuff. So working with Sacon, as you mentioned, Sacon is a mobility management tool and has that capability of pulling in all of your mobile devices, as well as the attributes associated to it, along with the line information and cost information that goes with it. So when we think about even just tying this back to total cost of ownership, we talked about all the different costs of different types of assets that an organization has. But I'm going to ask the viewers right now, who manage all of your assets, how are you tracking all of your mobile devices today? Right? Do you understand who's using them, what the cost is? And that's just from the physical asset or the physical mobile device itself. What about the line costs associated to it or any sort of maintenance or renewals that go along with it? Right. And so, what this offering that we have in our partnership with Sacon is that we are able to now digest all of that wealth of information from Sacon into ServiceNow. And by bringing that information into ServiceNow, now we have full access to the whole ServiceNow platform, right? One of the biggest selling points of ServiceNow is being able to use multiple different modules associated to it. So if you think about bringing in all of your mobile devices, now you have a better understanding to tie it back to any sort of requests or any sort of incidents or problems or changes that may go across to it, any sort of specific software that might be running on it from a licensing perspective. So you have access to all of this information now that it's being brought into ServiceNow.
That's awesome. Now let's switch gears just a little bit. Now, Sandeep, you've been with GlideFast for a few years now, and you've been intimately involved in dozens of asset management projects at GlideFast. So my question to you is, what makes GlideFast uniquely positioned to solve for an organization's most pressing challenges when it comes to their asset management program?
Great question. So, what makes GlideFast essentially the best, and what we are and what we do, right? Well, one, our we've got a number of different accolades that sort of back up our power in this space, essentially, right? So we're back to back partner of the year in 2022 and 2023. We have a dedicated project team that goes out to all of our engagements, right? And so when you do a project with GlideFast, not only are you getting a dedicated team to your specific project, but you also get all 600 of our employees and then some with that knowledge and expertise behind it, right? So when we're doing an ITAM project or any project for that matter, vision and best practices are essential, right? So we want to solve the problem that an organization has today, but we also want to ensure that you are set up and successful for the future as ServiceNow releases different versions of ServiceNow and ensuring that it's aligned with best practices and so that you're not missing any sort of features or capabilities, right? And so, we've done hundreds of these projects. I'm very happy and extremely proud to say that our CSAT scores for hardware asset management and software asset management is a perfect 5 out of 5. So it's not even just me saying this stuff. This is going out to our clients who do a survey on the work that we do and are reporting back that we are perfect in what we do and we are the best at doing it.
Wow. Well said. Well said. Listen, when I was just listening to you speak and I was watching, over your right shoulder,
Oh,
what
that's
is that that
trophy.
you have there? Curious if you can tell us a little bit more.
Yes. So this is one of the awards that I've won at GlideFast. This is for me personally. This is the most honorable award that I could get. Um, this is the goat of the year essentially. And so as I just mentioned, there are GlideFast has the best of the best people there. And so to be able to win such an award like this is very honoring and humbling that I was able to get this award. But GlideFast isn't just made up of one person. It's the whole team that we have. Over 1,300 mainline certifications. The culture that this company brings. This is just simply the best place to be.
Yeah. You know, and I appreciate you mentioning that, and I think that this is as a testament to your leadership when you said, yes, I'm really proud of this, but it's also like we have 1,300 mainline certifications. You kind of always go back to the team and the culture. I actually, and I don't know if you remember this, I actually heard Mike Lombardo say, Sandeep Babber, I trust him with my life. I mean, I've heard him say that. I think about even what I've heard from Jacob Binker, part of our leadership team here at GlideFast, all of the wonderful things that they're saying. And it's not just wonderful like, oh, Sandeep is great, nice guy, but like really speaking to the expertise that you bring to your craft. So, this is a giving you your flowers moment here that and I'm again your second time here in 100 days of service now, so I'm so happy to have been able to have this conversation with you here today.
Thank you so much, Callie. I really appreciate it. The pleasure is always mine.
Awesome. Well, Sandy, Babber, AVP of ITAM Solutions at GlideFast Consulting. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Wow, 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 wow. Wasn't that something? Listen, we talked about SACON earlier in this conversation. In the description to this video is a link to a webinar that will be talking about a solution for a company that uses SACON, ServiceNow, powered by GlideFast. That's going to be a webinar. You come and bring your questions. It's a great time to kind of listen to how we actually implement a solution and what that has looked like for Amedisys, the company that we'll be talking with. All right, so until next time, be kind and stay curious. Bye.